Great to bring in Jason Fitz from ESPN's First Take, Your Take every Wednesday at this time on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline because we get to have a little fun. Jay's great, has a lot of depth. We can go music, movies, talk, sports, you name it. Jason Fitz here on the Sports Bash. What's up, Fitz?
Man, I'm just living the dream, trying to stay healthy like everybody is, and just reminded right now how lucky I am, and I think we all sort of feel that way. So I love what you guys are doing, and it's cool to really recognize so many people right now that are working their tails off and keeping us safe. And, it's a reminder of how small what most of us do is compared to that. And, it's humbling to know that we get to still, get to do this every day. So it's a crazy time, but hopefully we can provide a little fun for everybody along the way.
Yeah, we're doing our best. And yesterday, the news with the baseball, like, hey, we might try to play baseball games in Arizona. And it was like, hey, we're on the radio, we're talking about it, we're having like some thoughts of, okay, some games could be back. And then, I got text message from my college roommate today, like, hey, in all seriousness, do you know anybody that's got the coronavirus? And, I live in Atlantic City. The numbers down here are not great. He lives up by New York, and he's telling me, I got 8 people I know in ICU. 1 guy has died. 4 people are in the hospital. 4 guys in my wedding passed. I'm thinking, wow, that's the difference of where we live as opposed to a bigger and the eye-opening, moment of like baseball seems so trivial, next to that stuff. But I don't know. Do you think baseball, basketball, any of these have a shot at getting off the ground when you bring it to that type of level of how different it is in some of these areas?
No, I think it's a far reach, and I want the same thing everybody else wants, which is some level of normalcy. And let's face it, we all crave it. And I'm no different than everybody else. Like, I do what I do because of my fandom of sports, right? So as a fan, I want it back. But I keep thinking through all of it. We have to remember, and yesterday on First Take Your Take, we had the Athletics Keith Law joined us, and he's a baseball writer for them. And I asked about some of these reports, and he made a great point that what we're hearing right now are reports of concepts, and that's far from reports of happenings. And not only all of that, but it would take the Players Association and Major League Baseball agreeing to it, and there's no real movement towards that. And frankly, I got to say this loudly, I don't blame the players. Like, just because they're millionaires that play sports and we love to watch them doesn't mean that they're supposed to put themselves or their families at risk for our entertainment. So, I think we're a ways away, and we take these little moments of hope and we move them forward because we need them so desperately. And I respect that, but, at what cost? Like, we can't let anything happen that puts people at risk, because ultimately that's the most important thing.
Yeah, now, I don't know what level of wrestling fan you are, but I know I was following your tweets that you watched WrestleMania the other night, and I'm wondering, like, do we think we could get into sports even if they rushed them back with no fans? Like, in other words, like we asked our listeners yesterday, do you want sports back so bad that you're willing to watch this product with no fans, or just wait and have fans and have the normalcy back? I got to be honest, and I used to watch a lot of wrestling up until about a year ago, and I watched the WrestleMania the other night. It was hard, man, and I just felt like just rushing to do it just doesn't feel right if that's what it's going to be. Because sports is about the momentum changes and the fans' energy and all of it. I feel like I'm almost willing to wait for the normalcy.
No, yeah, 1,000%. I found it to be, as sort of at best, I found it to be haunting is the best word I could use. And, watching wrestling, and look, I was a huge wrestling fan as a kid. I've come in and out of it as an adult, but I was really excited for it. And I went out and I spent the day before WrestleMania on Sunday, the Sunday night portion of it. I spent the day watching old WrestleManias from when I was a kid and got so excited watching, Macho Man was my favorite. So watching Macho Man win the title was a big deal. And I was so amped up for it. And then I watched the actual current WrestleMania, and it was just a haunting, constant reminder that right now the world's not the way we're used to the world. And, I keep looking at that saying, is that really what we want? Now, I think in fairness, I think there are some sports, like I'll go back to the NBA. The NBA, I think, might be a little bit better sort of situated than other sports to return if they can do it in front of nobody, because they would, I think, in theory, find presentation value. Like, I was surprised WrestleMania didn't have a DJ in the background, and I think the NBA would look at something like that. How do you make it so because silence is the scariest part of it, right? So how do you get rid of the silence? And that's unfortunately, I don't think an easy answer in an outdoor, baseball stadium. But for example, in an NBA arena, and Mark Spears suggested with me from Undefeated suggested before the shutdown even happened that the NBA look at things like having local DJs come in and really use that moment and that shine. And I could see them doing that. But short of that, even at that, I'm not sure it'll really feed anything, or will it just remind us of how different the world is right now and how much it doesn't feel right?
Jason Fitz, first take, your take, ESPN Radio. So last night, ESPN aired the game where Cal Ripken passed DiMaggio's streak and the consecutive games. And, I saw Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic tweet, I've covered World Series and Major League Baseball and Super Bowls and yada, yada, yada. So what game? You said we do this because we're fans. So do you remember a game? Like, I was at a weird game. Frank Thomas hit his 400th homer. I was randomly in Chicago, and I was like, I'm going to go check out this White Sox game. And I had no idea Frank Thomas was about to hit his 400th, and I'm at this game. So it kind of sticks out. I was at the Halladay game when he threw the no-hitter in the playoffs for the Phillies. So was there that game for you where you were like, that's the game that always sticks out to me when people talk about games that they were at?
Well, not to the same level. I didn't grow up a big baseball guy, so I didn't go to a lot of baseball games as a kid, and I didn't live in a lot of baseball markets. So for me, it stood out less.
Doesn't have to be baseball. Doesn't have to be baseball.
Yeah. I think there are different moments that stand out. Like Michael Jr. and I did a pregame show on Monday night that we do digitally for ESPN before the Monday Night Football game. And that was the return for the Saints against the Falcons to the Superdome after Katrina. I obviously remember that. But the funny thing is, as a lifelong Raiders fan, most of the games that I have the biggest memories for are the ones that broke my heart. Like, I remember the Super Bowl loss and waking up that morning. I was having a huge house party, and I wake up that morning to find out that Barrett Robbins has gone AWOL, and then I watched all of my friends drink all my beer, and the Raiders lose the game. I remember the AFC Championship 51-3 loss to the Bills as a kid. So, like, a lot of my memories are more TV memories, but they're memories about these specific low points of being a Raiders fan. I'm still waiting for the high, man. I'm still waiting for the high point.
Now, did you hear any of Brady today on the Stern show?
Yeah.
Okay, so when Stern asked him about how much the Raiders kind of pursued him, does that kind of like let you down a little bit? Like that they didn't go full. Like, did you want Brady to be a Raider?
Not particularly, only because I think for every team, Brady only works if you've got your long-term plan and your current plan. Like, I think the Buccaneers have gone all in, and as a brand, great. It's going to help the Buccaneers. Does it make the Buccaneers a Super Bowl team? Not to me. And now what? So you're going to have Brady for the next 2 years, and then what do you do? And one of the things that really hit me, whether it was the conversation around the Titans or the conversation around the Raiders, is that if you're going to take Brady, to me, you've also then got to address what you want the future at the quarterback position to be. And for most of those teams, to me, in this draft, there are two quarterbacks worth banking your entire franchise on. It's Burrow and it's Tua, and we all know the injury around Tua. But those are the two great ones. I wouldn't be comfortable with my favorite team drafting Jordan Love or Justin Herbert based on their body of work in college. So, the reason I, as a Raiders fan, wasn't all in on Brady is because Brady might get you 1 year, maybe two if you're lucky, but then what? And, I've lived through Jamarcus Russell and, I've lived through Todd Marinovich. So the concept of just like not having a quarterback at all, I would take at least middle of the road to upper half quarterback play over the concept of having to dip back in and, take the risk that you have no answer at quarterback for a generation.
Now, what part of the interview was more compelling, the football part of it, or like him talking about him having like marriage issues with Giselle and that she wrote him a letter and that, he had to like change his ways? I found that to be very, I always wonder, like, these guys, like, we do what we do. And it's like we're always on the air no matter what. Like, if you're married to a woman who just doesn't understand sports and like the team's like 20 games out of first place and you're like in the dog days of summer and she's like, do you really need to go to this game today? Like, you don't have any shot. Like, he's like, I'm doing my football thing and I'm not holding up my end of this marriage here. Like, that was an eye-opening part of the conversation.
Well, I think it's a reminder that when we look at context for why people leave organizations or why they do what they do, we have to remember that the only context we get is the context they allow us to get. We don't get personal context from so many of these athletes. I find it a little refreshing because let's remember that, for their particular relationship, Brady makes the fun money. Giselle makes the real money. Brady just makes their vacation fund money, So there's a moment there where we forget that at the end of it all, these guys are human. And so if Giselle comes in and says, I'm not comfortable with who you are because of your work environment makes you somebody that's not easy to be around. The fact that he's willing to listen to that, I think, is a statement that, is one that a lot of people need to hear. Like, sometimes you need that wake-up call, and it's refreshing to know that you need that wake-up call, even if you're Brady and Giselle.
All right, Jason Fitz, First Take, Your Take, ESPN Radio. What unique thing do you want to see happen with this, Zoom draft that the NFL is going to be putting on?
Well, what I want is I'll never get, but what I really wish they would do is they would keep the cameras on, and then I have to show it to us in the moment, but show me afterwards. Like, I would love to see the real reaction from GMs and coaches when they get snaked and somebody trades right up above them and gets a guy that they were just dreaming of in the 5th round. Like, I would love to see that honest, sort of like fantasy football when you're convinced you've outsmarted the whole board and then the guy right before you picks the guy you wanted. I would love to see that human reaction. I doubt we'll get that, but I do hope that they archive everything and give it to us afterwards to give us a real peek behind the scenes, because we'll never see a draft like this again in all likelihood. So if we're never going to see a draft like this again, and we're getting into people's homes and we're getting what feels like more of a real environment for your favorite team's head coach and your favorite team's GM, I'd love to see what some of that interaction actually looks like from everybody and really be able to go back and live that moment through in 20 years with do you remember the draft of 2020?
A lot of fun, obviously some tough times, but I think a lot of people, what you guys do at ESPN nationally, locally, we're seeing the media world come up with some very creative things, and it's great to see a lot of creative minds working and having fun and trying to keep people entertained and, having some sort of release. Like if there are no sports games on, I get asked all the time. My buddy is a lawyer, has no idea about sports, doesn't know anything about it, and he says to me last night, now mind you, sports haven't been played since March 15th, and he's like, what are you even talking about? And I'm laughing like I'm having the best time, like just coming up with fun different things. What's coming up after you, Jason? We have the 1995 NBA Jam rosters, the best duos in NBA Jam 95. Do you remember one?
Oh, in 95, no, but I will tell you that the best duo in NBA Jam history, without question, was Kobe and Shaq together on one team. Come on, like you couldn't stop. That was and one of my favorites back when I used to be on with Sarah Spain every day, and we did Spain and Fitz on ESPN Radio. We actually had the voice of NBA Jams come on with us at one point, and I mean, to me, that was like I was a fan the entire way. I was like a little kid in a candy store, and Sarah laughed at me the entire time because I'm like, you don't understand. But give me Kobe Shaq all day long. That's the one I want.
One thing I learned in this, we've done 93 on Monday, 94 yesterday. Today we're on 95. I learned that Midway, who was the maker of the game, was too cheap to pay certain people. Like Jordan is not in the NBA Jam games because they couldn't afford them. Gary Payton is not in the game because they couldn't afford them. So some of these duos are bupkis.
I mean, that you're absolutely shaking my core here. I'm also suddenly deciding I think I'm going to have to look to see if I can find like an NBA Jam game for my house at this point. Like now I feel like I need like one of those old school stand-up arcade versions.
Yes.
If I could get one that had NBA Jams and NFL Blitz on it, I would never leave the house again.
Yeah, I'm in. All right. Jason Fitz, First Take, Your Take. Of course, he joins us each Wednesday right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Stay safe, bud.
You guys, too. I appreciate you having me. Stay safe.
Always, man. We'll talk to him next week. Have a little more fun.